LSU beats Louisiana Tech 23-7, but it was a costly win. We're talking about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you so much for that. LSU moves to 2-0. They beat Louisiana Tech 23-7. But my goodness, was this a potentially costly win? And I'm not just talking about the $1.6 million LSU paid Louisiana Tech to come down from Ruston and take this L. It's the fact that LSU might have lost a couple of starters. If you watched the game or have heard by now, you probably know that both starting center Braelin Moore and sophomore tight end Trey'Dez Green both left the game with injuries. We are waiting to see the severity of those injuries. I'll tell you what I know coming up in just a bit, but I want to recap the game first. So let's dive into this. LSU wins the game 23-7, and it was a game where if you were anticipating a letdown and maybe a look ahead, that sandwich spot after Clemson before Florida, you were right. I wasn't. I picked LSU to win this game 45-7. When we walked into football ops for the press conference on Tuesday, Brian Kelly press conference, and on that wall on the left where they have the 15 slots for all the games this season, the 12 regular season games, the SEC championship, a playoff game, and national championship were the 15 slots. And the only slot was Louisiana Tech. They didn't even have the Clemson win displayed. It was just, that was covered. It was just Louisiana Tech. It was all one, and I was like, they're bought in. Veteran team, all these transfers, experienced guys, they're bought in. They're going to be locked in and ready to go against the Tech team that really struggled a week ago against FCS Southeastern Louisiana. LSU is definitely not ready to go. And it's one of the reasons I hate these games. I've told you, if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it a bunch. I am very much in favor of an all Power 4 schedule, but there has to be uniformity. Like, you're never going to have one team choose to challenge themselves in that way without a reward when everyone isn't going to do it. My hope is that we eventually get there. We're getting there. The SEC is moving to a 9-game schedule, plus the Power 4 non-conference mandate. So you'll be paying 10 of your 12 games against Power 4, and you're going to get up for those games more so than you are. LSU was up for Clemson. They were not up for Louisiana Tech, and it showed in the way they executed or failed to execute, particularly on the offensive side of the ball throughout this game. And you have nothing to gain in games like this and everything to lose. Look at Florida. Florida literally lost the game to South Florida on Saturday in Gainesville. And LSU potentially lost two key players, contributors to this team, including their most valuable offensive lineman and maybe the biggest mismatch they have on the offensive side of the ball in Trey'Dez Green. This is a very costly game for LSU. So a few things. I think maybe more than anything, this was a case of execution. It's not that this is a bad LSU team. I had someone ask me, do I feel differently about LSU and their national championship hopes now than I did last week? No. Why would I feel? So LSU goes on the road to Clemson, who, by the way, had their own struggles with Troy. I mean, they were losing to Troy at halftime on their home field, came back and won the game, but they struggled through a game as well, a letdown spot after last week's emotional game against LSU. But LSU went on the road to Clemson, who we all know, fifth-year senior quarterback, 3-year starter, coaches won 2 national titles, 4 starters returning on the offensive line with 170 starts, 11 preseason All-ACC first-team members, the most returning production in college football. LSU went on the road and won that game in a madhouse of an environment. And I'm supposed to take more out of LSU slogging their way through a game against a CUSA team in front of a disinterested crowd the week after that? No, of course we saw what LSU is when they play at their best, full, peak locked in intensity a week ago. Maybe this is a learning experience, but this was more about LSU's execution than anything else. Look at the first possession of the ball game. Braelin Moore gets hurt on the first play, unfortunately. But after you convert a 3rd and 1 on first down from the 36-yard line, you run a go route with Berrien Brown to the left side, who's open. Garrett Nussmeier underthrows the ball. It gets batted into the air and intercepted. If Garrett Nussmeier throws a better ball, which he could do in his sleep, that's a touchdown. You're up 7-0 4 plays into the game. Instead, you've thrown an interception 4 plays into the game. You can look at the very next offensive possession for LSU. After you convert a 3rd and 3, then there's a defensive holding. So you've moved the ball now to their 31. You're at their 31-yard line. You're deep in their territory very quickly. You have an illegal formation. So now it's 1st and 15. Nuss throws a beautiful ball over the middle to Xavier Thomas, who drops it. Instead of having the ball inside the red zone and having them on their heels, now instead, you've got a 2nd and 15. Aaron Anderson gets dropped for a 2-yard loss. Weston Davis gets hurt. On 3rd and 17, you complete a pass to Nick Anderson for 4 yards. You blow a timeout because you're not prepared, and then you miss a 51-yard field goal. You had the ball at their 31, and you throw a beautiful pass that's dropped, and instead of having a ball in deep in the red zone or a goal-to-go situation, you end up missing a 51-yard field goal. That's nothing Louisiana Tech did. That's LSU's execution or lack thereof. Look at your final possession before the end of the first half. First play of that possession, Harlan Berry rips off an 11-yard run. Xavier Thomas then gets hit, fumbles. Thank goodness it went out of bounds. Otherwise, Tech would have been in business in a 10-0 ball game deep in your territory. Again, you end up moving the ball. They commit a pass interference. You get the ball to the 43-yard line. You're at the 40. You're approaching midfield. You're in your 4-minute offense. You're trying to go get points before halftime. First down, Harlan Berry false start. He moves some pistol, offset to the right side, and he leans forward and false starts. Lack of execution. On that same drive, you get a sack, and then on 3rd and 16, Nuss is pressured, incomplete pass, you end up punting. It's those types of things that aren't things that Louisiana Tech did to you. It's not that you're incapable. It was lack of focus, lack of execution in those situations. I mean, we could keep going. If you look at the fourth quarter red zone possession that LSU had, again, you end up, after you overcome a KJ Jackson holding call, to get a first down at their 21. Xavier gets a reception for 6 yards. It's 1st and 10 at their 15. It's a 17-0 ball game. You're trying to put this thing away. It's the possession that at the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th, you have first down at their 15-yard line. Incomplete pass. Xavier Thomas, loss of 5, sack, -9. You end up kicking a 46-yard field goal. How are you getting to their 15-yard line and you go backwards? That's a lack of execution in those situations. On your next possession, the possession begins 10:26 to play in the ball game. You're up 20-0. Again, you're trying to put this thing away and get out of there. Before you even snap the ball, DJ Chester, who's in center, false starts. So now you're behind the sticks at 1st and 15. You end up going 3 and out punting. The false start was nothing Louisiana Tech did. It was lack of concentration and execution. That's what plagued LSU in this ball game. It's why it ended up being a much closer game than it ever should have been. But there were some good things, and I want to get into some of those takeaways, which we'll do as we continue. But I also want to talk about what I know about Braelin Moore and about Trey'Dez Green. And we'll do that as we continue here on Locked On LSU, your team every day. You can just move through life, or you can find things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there. Choose your people. You can choose to go for it. Really, go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Mazda. Move and be moved. We're also brought to you today by DoorDash. The weekend is here, so time to look back at the week and crown this week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it matters most. So let's break it down. For LSU, after this game against Louisiana Tech, how about we go with someone like Braelin Moore? Led LSU with 8 catches and was just shy of 100 yards receiving as well. He delivered in a big way, came up with some big plays, including a 16-yard reception on a 3rd and 9 and a 50-yard return at the end of the game as well. If you've been watching week after week, you can know for Braelin Moore, this was no fluke. And just like Braelin Moore delivered for LSU, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season, you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this coming Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Well, on the first offensive play of the game, Braelin Moore, as we all saw, got his ankle rolled and left. Left the game with injury. He went to the locker room. LSU does have an x-ray machine in the locker room. So they were able to x-ray Braelin Moore's ankle in the locker room. And thankfully, that x-ray didn't reveal any severe damage to Braelin Moore's ankle. He came back in the first half to the sideline, still in uniform. And according to the LSU Sports Radio Network, was doing agility drills on the sideline. He was even practicing snapping. But as I was told, he was still feeling a lot of pain. And so they made the decision to shut him down. So at halftime, he changed into street clothes and they put him in a boot. I know sometimes when we see a boot, that can be a little jarring, but I do think it's important to remember that that's more of a stabilization precautionary measure. Even in the women's basketball season this past year, like Flaugier would wear a boot when she wasn't playing, when she was battling her injury, and then she'd go take the boot off and play. So it's more just a stabilization. At this point, we don't know the severity of Braelin Moore's injury, but the fact that he came out of the locker room and was trying to give it a go, I think I'm just absolutely looking at circumstantial evidence here. I think is a pretty good sign. Now, it's also worth noting, Braelin Moore's your best offensive lineman. He's your most experienced guy. He's your most important guy in the middle, touching the football every play, making all the calls, identifying the Mike linebacker, picking up blitz protections, all that sort of stuff. You really don't need Braelin Moore practice this week. My old friend Mike Detillier, as he often says, practice is for the unskilled. Well, Braelin Moore is very skilled. If you could just get him ready to roll for Saturday against Florida, great. The following week, you play Southeastern Louisiana, and you really don't need him to play against Southeastern. Then you could give him a week off if you needed to, and then have him ready to go, hopefully, when you go to Oxford to play Ole Miss. So in theory, if you could get Braelin Moore ready to go for Saturday, then you could effectively give him from Saturday until 2 Saturdays when you play at Ole Miss, nearly 2 weeks to try to get as close to healthy with treatment as you could. We're going to wait and see how that plays out. But one thing was evident. Braelin Moore exited a week ago. LSU and their protections were outstanding against Clemson. A great defensive front from Clemson with potential first-round picks all over that defense, including certainly Parker Woods. Helt is the Purdue transfer, got the only sack. Well, in this game against Louisiana Tech, not nearly the physical ability that Clemson has, and you're playing at home. Louisiana Tech came up with 3 sacks and 8 TFLs. 3 sacks and 8 TFLs. They were in the backfield harassing Garrett Nussmeier, disrupting LSU the entire game. They also had 3 additional quarterback hurries, 5 pass breakups. It's hard to say it's all because Braelin Moore wasn't there, but it's a massive component of it because when he's sitting there quite literally in the middle, think about how many times in this game you saw Garrett Nussmeier rolling to his left or right, flushed from pressure. That's because pressure was coming up the middle. Pressure coming from the edge, he could step up in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield. When he's rolling, it's because pressure's coming up the middle. That's what Braelin Moore prevents. That's what you weren't able to prevent on Saturday against Louisiana Tech. Hopefully we get an update, and hopefully it's good news on Braelin Moore. Now, we also saw Trey'Dez Green's injury as well. It was on that drive, the possession at the end of the third quarter that bled into the fourth quarter. It was the 2nd and 10 play where KJ Jackson, or Caleb Jackson, I should say, it was a 2nd and 10 run for a loss of a yard, and on that play is when Trey'Dez kind of got rolled into his knee. We all saw the play. He kind of did an awkward split, and his knee bent awkwardly. Now, he spent a long time in the injury tent. When he came out of the injury tent, he had a brace on his right leg, on his knee, and was on crutches. Clearly, whatever they could do to take pressure off of that, they were going to. I was told afterwards that Trey'Dez is going to have an MRI Sunday. So we should get more clarification on Trey'Dez, if not Sunday, then certainly Monday when Brian Kelly meets with reporters during his weekly press conference. We should find out then more details about Trey'Dez Green's injury. But this was a day for LSU where they were 5 for 5 in the red zone, but 3 times they kicked field goals. 2 of those possessions, they had goal-to-go situations. There were 2 times where LSU had goal-to-go situations and ended up kicking field goals. That is unacceptable. And Trey'Dez Green is a massive part of what LSU does on every part of the field, but especially in the red zone because of the mismatch he creates, as we saw a week ago against Clemson. So those 2 are critically important. There were 2 other injuries that are of note. Weston Davis went out in the first half, but did quickly return to the game, which is good. Is that you're starting right tackle. And then Jamari Butler late in the game also went out with injury. And that's one of the devastating things where you go, this is a game that should have been well out of hand. It's disgusting to see key players, either starters or key rotation guys, still, I'm watching Whit Weeks running around with 4 minutes to play in this game against Louisiana Tech. And I'm going, can you please get a big enough lead just to get Whit Weeks and his 2 healthy, beautiful ACLs off the field right now? It's the last thing in the world that you need to see is any of those guys running around taking an injury in a game at the end of a garbage game like this against Louisiana Tech. But we'll wait and see for updates on those specific injuries. We should have them, if not Sunday, then Monday when Brian Kelly meets with reporters. A few other takeaways from this game. Despite the offensive struggles, and I know that's what's going to be the thing that most people focus on, the defense was outstanding in this ball game yet again. My quote-unquote bold prediction for this season for LSU was that for the first time since 2017, but LSU would finish in the top 20 in total defense nationally. And it certainly looks like it's going to happen, barring something dramatically unforeseen. Louisiana Tech scored only 7 points, and it was the late touchdown that they got on a busted coverage, which sucked. Everybody was hoping they would have gotten the shutout, but Tech got a busted coverage play and scored. Even with that play, that was a 33-yard catch and run by Gandy. Tech put up 154 yards of offense. So before that busted coverage play, Tech was around 120 yards of offense, 121 yards of total offense in the game. Tech's possessions were, if they had, let's see, they had 5 3-and-outs. They had 5 3-and-outs, then a 4-possession drive and a 5-possession drive. That's about as dominant a defensive performance as you could possibly hope for. Tech ran for just 58 yards, only 12 first downs to 27 for LSU. LSU was 9 of 16 on third down. LSU was better than 50% on third down. They moved the ball, which is the maddening thing. They moved the ball. They just didn't finish drives with touchdowns, settling for too many field goal opportunities. LSU had held Tech to just 3 of 13 on third downs. It was you didn't get a takeaway, and they didn't have a red zone possession, by the way. Their score was from 33 yards out. They did not get to the red zone the entire game. And LSU was 5 for 5 in the red zone. So there was a lot to like defensively about this game. West Weeks was your leading tackler. Devon Keys quietly was your second leading tackler in this game. We saw Jack Pyburn share a sack with Jordan Gilbert. We saw Harold Perkins and Ahmad Bro share a sack. West Weeks also had a half a sack in the ball game. So you were very active. 2 sacks, 5 TFLs in the game, 5 pass breakups. You had 3 quarterback hurries. You should have had an interception, but Ashton Stamps dropped one at the end, which ended up being the drive where they did eventually score. But this was a game where defensively, it's hard to argue with anything. We saw DJ Pickett come on a corner blitz. He was credited with a pass breakup, but he was nearly got a sack. But he forced an errant throw, so he was credited with a pass breakup there. So nice to see the defense on a day where the offense didn't show up and play their best. The defense still was very effective on this day. Braelin Brown was outstanding. I think most people probably saw, if you didn't in week one, you saw against Tech why we were also high on Braelin Brown. How explosive and sudden he is. 8 catches for 94 yards with a long of only 19. Aaron Anderson also had 8 for 73 in this ball game. They both led the team with in receptions with 8, but Brown had 94 receiving yards on the day. And again, if Nussmeier hadn't misfired on that first down play in the first possession, the interception, that would have been a touchdown to Braelin Brown. So could have been an even bigger day for Braelin Brown with a better throw on that ball from Nussmeier at the start of the game. And Chris Hilton didn't have a catch. So I know I keep getting asked, where's Chris Hilton? Well, Hilton and Brown play a very similar role as the deep threat. They can stretch the field. And it's pretty obvious. Braelin Brown is a better option right now. Chris Hilton is certainly capable. And Chris Hilton had a couple of targets. He drew a PI. And they targeted him in the end zone on that crossing route on the back line where it was to the back left pylon where it was incomplete. But it was Braelin Brown's day. And it looked like at the start it was going to be Nick Anderson's day. Nick Anderson caught a touchdown and had 3 receptions in the first 2 drives, didn't have a catch after that. So, what Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier have all said pretty routinely when they've been asked this, and I've asked them all the same question, how do you keep this many guys involved? The reality is, and the understanding is, some days it's going to be offensive days that feature certain guys. Last week, it was Aaron Anderson. Last week was Aaron Anderson, Caden Durham. This week, it was Braelin Brown's turn to shine. Aaron Anderson still had a great day. Look, Bauer Sharp, I should mention. A week ago, Bauer Sharp led the team with 8 targets. He had 5 catches on 8 targets. Bauer Sharp had 1 catch in this ballgame for 8 yards. It just wasn't his day. And that's going to happen week to week based on the matchup. And so all these guys have to stay ready because you never know who is going to burst out. I mentioned red zone. Tigers were 5 for 5 in the red zone, which is outstanding. And you want to be ideally 100% in the red zone with 75% touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty much the average that you want to see. Well, you were 100% in the red zone, but you settled for 3 field goals. So you only scored on 2 touchdowns on 2 of the 5 drives. So 40% of your drives in this game, your red zone possessions, ended in touchdowns. 2 of the field goals were in goal-to-go situations. The last field goal was a 19-yard field goal. Now, there was another red zone possession where you ran it 3 straight times with Caden Durham and got in the end zone. So you were able to play a little bully ball and get in the end zone. But you've got to be better. You've got to be better at converting touchdowns in the red zone. Threes, there is going to be a game somewhere along the way where 3 isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to be able to convert touchdowns in the red zone. And they just didn't do it against Louisiana Tech. Tigers did dominate time of possession just like they did a week ago where they controlled the ball for 37 minutes against Clemson. In this game, LSU time of possession, again, 36-52 to 23-08. Tigers held the ball for 37 minutes again this week. And it is absolutely a credit to the defense and Joe Sloan's commitment to running the ball. Even when it's not going great, it's still a commitment to running. You are seeing more balance. Nussmeier was 26 of 41 for 237, a touchdown and a pick. LSU they threw 41 passes. They ran it 34 times. And also, in fairness, there were a handful of plays that went down as passing attempts that were really rushes, where Thomas or Anderson were coming in motion and Nussmeier did the pop pass, a little shovel forward pass to them. Those go down as passing attempts. So you actually were much more close to balance run pass, even than the 41 passing attempts, 34 rushing attempts, because some of those quote unquote passes were really just rushing attempts that in the stat book go down as passing attempts. It was really great to see Harlem Berry have some success. You got to see why He's so explosive. He had an 11-yard run, had the 43-yard run as well. Really thought at the end of the game he was going to get in the end zone. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. But you saw the explosiveness and why he's special and why he's oozing potential and ability and why he's going to be a great one. But it was nice to see Harlem Berry get going. And now, the focus shifts to Florida. And while this was a disappointing outing, I fully expect in Tiger Stadium, Saturday night, the Florida Gators coming in, a wounded Florida team, which has lost to South Florida. So you better believe is going to be locked in and ready to go to make amends for this past week with a little bit of desperation. This should be a different, attitude from LSU with Florida coming in than what we just saw with Louisiana Tech. And ideally, you'd love it if you played your best game every week. It's just not realistic. It is a literal fact that in every season, no matter what sport, no matter what team, when a season's over, you will look back and there will be a best game and a worst game. Like you could say that was our best game, that was our worst game. Every season, every sport, no matter what. And what you hope is that when you play your worst game, you still manage to win. So my hope is the game we just saw LSU play against Louisiana Tech, when the season's over, we look back and go, that was the worst game LSU played all year. And they managed to win it. Florida played a terrible game and lost to South Florida. So I anticipate both these teams are going to be locked in. I think LSU is going to feed off the energy of the crowd because it should be an awesome crowd for Florida coming in next weekend. And with LSU playing its first conference game of the season with a ton on the line. So hopefully this is a team with a renewed focus and energy that more matches what we saw against Clemson and what we saw against Louisiana Tech when the Tigers take on the Gators next week in Tiger Stadium. And of course, Tigers are going to be bringing a vaunted defense, which right now, through 2 weeks, has proven to be among the best in the country. See how they do next week against the DJ Lagway offense that really struggled mightily against South Florida this past week. We'll be here talking about it, leading you up to and then after LSU and Florida from Tiger Stadium next Saturday. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Do me a favor, if you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.